while mission one in DHS is obviously secure our borders, there is a huge amount of jointness in doing so than I had ever seen in my tenure. And you see that in a number of things that then come out in contractual arrangements.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast to bring together experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Future of GovCon. We're thrilled to have with us today a great mind who has literally helped raise the Department of Homeland Security, has been with it since the inception. We have Sue Armstrong calling in from the greater Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. metro area. Is that right, Sue?
That's correct. Falls Church, Virginia. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Sue. It's been great to get to know you over the course of this past year.
Well, thank you. You too.
Sue has an incredible career that I'm going to let her summarize to go into details, but we've had the chance to get to know Sue this year through setting up our precision experts and helping a lot of folks that are transitioning. And Sue's been a leader amongst peers in that space, and it's just great to be able to sit down with someone that knows so much about one of the agencies that is going through the most incredible change and transformation with the Department of Homeland Security. So we're really lucky to have Sue here. Thanks for your time again, Sue.
Thank you. And transformation is the right word. We started as a transformation of government over 20 years ago. And here we are again in a massive look across the agency missions to make an agency mission. So, but if I could go in and a little bit about myself.
Yeah, tell us
Sure.
about Sue growing up. Like, what kind of kid were you? What kind of student were you? Talk about growing up a little bit.
All right. I grew up in a Navy family. My dad was nuclear submarines and Army. At one point this
tough.
weekend.
Yeah.
So we lived all over the place. Lived in California, lived in Connecticut, lived in Charleston. Mostly any place there was a shipyard handling nuclear subs. My dad went on to command a sub-tender, the LY Sphere. He commissioned the USS Louisville, a Trident sub, that was very cool. My sister and I got to ride it into the Thames River. And he retired as CO of Kings Bay Naval Station in Georgia, St. Mary's, Georgia. And that was at a time when very few of the ports could, and this is where infrastructure comes in, very few of the ports had the deep water for the new classes of subs. So he oversaw that development.
So you got to live on Navy bases all over the world?
Yes, or the immediate surroundings of Navy bases, yeah.
Okay.
And
Were you in the Dodd school system as a child, or?
No, we went to public school, and in Charleston we went to a private First Baptist Church school, which is smack downtown in the historic district.
Nice.
So that was cool. And I was very lucky among my peers of this community because I got to go to high school all 4 years in the same place.
That's rare.
And that was rare.
Yeah.
So.
I know. I was a brat too. I mean, every 3 years, just when you got started, you had to pick up and pack it up.
Pack it up and and move on,
Yeah.
or move back someplace you'd been. Um, so I went to high school, like I said, in Connecticut, and then I came to DC, which I've been in this area ever since, which is unusual, I know, to kind of come and stay. And my family is all originally from Texas, so uh, a big move, big
Yeah.
juxtaposition. But I went to American University here in Washington, and I did the 5-year undergrad and master's program in criminal justice. And I was all set to go to law school and was starting to apply and studying for the LSAT. And then this program that was affectionately known as the Presidential Management Fellows Program, or Presidential Management Intern Program, excuse me, when it first started. It became the Fellows after the mid 90s. Um, and that program really opened my eyes to what you could do with a criminal justice degree in public service. Um, Research, courts administration. I chose investigations, and
Yeah.
I was an 1811 criminal investigator for
Why?
about
Why
16.
did you pick investigations? It seemed
I
like
read
you
a
were.
lot of Nancy Drew books as a
Is that
kid.
right? A lot of the pilots we have are was inspired by Top Gun, so I was wondering what gets someone into
Mhm.
investigations.
And that's not the only reason, it's that the application of the law to the place where you and your family live, and, enforcing the law. Really what fascinated me was, the bigger scale visa fraud and contract fraud investigations, very complex, what we would call forensics nowadays. That term was just starting to be used back in the late 80s. But that whole notion of turning data into proof that something happened, didn't happen, has extenuating circumstances. Oh my goodness, there's somebody completely else that never was on anybody's radar that was involved. And so the whole notion of investigations, going to court, seeing large cases come to fruition after maybe a year or two of effort was very cool. And my first job was with the State Department. So I got to do that for the US government overseas in United States embassies and consulates,
Oh,
and
cool.
actually
How did
work
you
on. Go ahead.
how did you get into government? Like, what was the you decided not to go to law school and go in and work in the government. Would they recruit you, or did you apply, or what was the path?
The I was recruited, and in grad school, when the PMI and PMF program was active, you would be nominated by your school to be an intern or a fellow. And it was an agreement for service. You would promise a couple of
Okay.
years of government service, and you'd enter at a GS-9 as opposed to, a very basic entry level position. And it was just a group of situated people, and you stuck together as a cluster group. I still have friends from that time, and it was just a great way to get into public service. Um, they were very good at explaining what public service is and isn't. And, the government was looking for innovation, new ways to do things more efficiently, and on and on. So the sky was, it felt like the sky was the limit. And I took the nomination and was accepted into the program. And then you start looking for a job upon your
Okay.
acceptance. And you're looking while you're finishing usually your last semester of grad school. So,
Okay, so you go into the State Department. I guess you're
mhm,
going around the world to embassies. And
mhm.
what are you looking for the bad guys? What are you doing?
You are looking at allegations of uh, misconduct, whether that is from within the embassy itself, the staff. Are people uh, engaged, being bribed for their decision on a visa or an application or a contract? Are those around the embassy that provide services to the embassy or the surrounding consulates, are they defrauding the U.S. government? Um, and that's everything from basic services to construction. While I was an agent, the issues with the Moscow embassy surfaced, and that was an eye opener for a lot of people in how contracts were awarded, monitored,
Uh-huh.
and really, kept a bead on. So
Okay. What was the issue? I don't even remember. I wasn't.
there was some pretty massive infiltration of the systems and the communications
Uh-huh.
systems at the embassy
Uh-huh.
itself. And it was a new construction, so this was all being hardwired into it from the
Of course.
intelligence gathering by another government
Yeah.
perspective.
Okay. That makes
So
sense. So you did 10 years doing criminal investigations. Is that right?
I did 10 well, I worked for state until 1993, because we had our first child and was a little hard to drop everything and go overseas for an undetermined amount
Right.
of time. And so I worked for the General Services Administration, IG, Inspector General, for 3 years. And that was, again, mostly contract fraud in the GSA real estate portfolio in the United States, plus
Okay.
some security issues and plus some just personal conduct um, issues. And then I went to the Legacy Immigration and Naturalization Service, and that was part of Justice at the time. This was pre Homeland,
Right.
and was there a couple of years and ended up getting promoted into the assistant director for internal investigations position there. At and that was it later. That's that spring of the next year we merged as in came into Homeland Security. And that was the spring where, 2003, where Homeland literally stood up.
Yeah. I think a lot of the maybe younger folks or they don't realize how young DHS is as an agency. I mean,
Correct.
it's it was kind of a child of 9/11, right? And the necessity to integrate all these different um, agencies under one command,
Mm,
right?
yeah. And a lot of 9/11, most definitely, but what I think is important to remember, that the move to better security throughout the US government, meaning security of data and networks, that was about the time that commercial use of the internet was authorized by Congress. And in 1995, this year was the 30th anniversary of the Oklahoma City Murrah building bombing, which is still the worst domestic um, terrorist act in the United States on record. And so a lot of the security programs that came to Homeland Security aimed at federal facilities, security of the workforce, security of data and systems, uh, came out of Oklahoma City.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
I, I didn't know that was the root of it, but so talk about kind of standing up DHS. I mean, that's a huge problem set. What was your
Mhm.
role and what did you see in the early days?
Well, the early days were really interesting. There was a little bit of transition time, and GSA hosted um, the new DHS leadership, and that was Governor Tom Ridge
Yeah.
as the first secretary. And it was a little, dare I say, chaotic. They found us a Navy facility, actually right near American University. It's literally across a word circle, called the Nebraska Avenue Complex. And it had Navy International and Navy Treaty offices still, but it had been unused for a long time. So I like to call it a very aggressive um, non-use of maintenance program going on there. So the first summer, it was pretty chaotic. We were trying to set up the Homeland Security Operations Center for situational awareness. And hey, what are all the components doing? Because they're all over the country. They were already established, and that notion of bringing together a picture of situational awareness was harder than it looked. And every day in the summer at 4:15, the power would go out because nobody had cleaned the air filters outside the building that housed the Homeland Security Operations Center, and they were full of leaves and other gross stuff. And we'd have a brownout every afternoon with an equipment full of building, a building full of equipment. Um, and the facilities were in various states. I was deputy chief of staff of IAIP, Information Analysis and Infrastructure Protection, which was the one new piece of government that the Homeland Security Act created. The rest was a merger and bringing together of 22 disparate agencies and program offices throughout the government that had a nexus to this new Homeland Security mission. And we had a building that some days had power, some days didn't, some days had air conditioning, some days didn't. I actually bought or had made a shirt at one point that said, "Yes, I know it's really hot in here."
Well, good. Just so
Because
everybody
as I
knows.
walked down the hall, that would be what people told me.
Yeah.
But it was basically, "Welcome to IAIP. We're really excited you're here. We have this kick out." Can I say that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The new mission, and we're gonna we're gonna get out there and we're gonna take names and oh, by the way, I need to ask you, would you go down to the really scary basement with no lights and see if you can find a chair
Yeah. Just really
that you
it's a
can sit in?
startup, right? It's a
Yes.
startup.
So it was a startup within a startup. But things good people got together with good intentions and we made it work.
Was there a dominant kind of sub-agency within DHS? And I can't imagine the egos or I don't know, the kind of the established infrastructure that now has to give way to a higher headquarters. Was there a sub-agency that was particularly harder to integrate or more dominant?
Well, I would say, to be fair, everybody was hard to integrate because they were all so different.
Yeah.
Some were the parts of immigration that were public facing and welcoming people in, and then other parts of immigration were the border patrol and worksite enforcement. So that coming together and then being parceled elsewhere was very hard all around. I will say, and TSA had just started up in transportation
Yep.
and moved to Homeland. So they were again like a startup in a startup. And I will say everybody tried, but just translating that many mission sets and that many authorities and that many oversight committees in Congress to a coherent, cogent picture of here's who we are, here's what we do, here's what we need, Congress, to do it more effectively in an integrated fashion. But I would say that um, the operational components, the seven, um, as they were called, were more established. That's absolutely
Who were the
fair.
7? Give me the 7.
The Secret Service, the s what became CBP out of Customs, um, or out of Treasury, sorry. Secret Service was Treasury as well. Um, the, FEMA, the Coast Guard, and they were just I felt bad. They were just like, "What?" Because they were very well established.
Yeah.
Um and then other parts of what we now know as ICE and HSI within ICE. And again, like I said, the legacy immigration had two big pieces that are components now: USCIS
Right.
and ICE.
Nice. Right. Okay.
So
Do you think today, I mean, that uh, kind of territorial, but I guess must still exist to some extent within the agencies, the sub agencies of DHS, right?
I think it does. Just because when you've done something and it's repeated, you have processes or things that you're responsible for that you always take the same steps of necessity, public safety being one of them. Um, there is that legacy feel of, well, we're important here. But I have noticed, even in my time there, this willingness to work with each other, among each other, to leverage resources, particularly in the field, to leverage relationships. So, kind of moving to what is now CISA, we tried an experiment, and everybody, I mean, I won't, I won't mention the name of a congressperson who like yelled at me when we were piloting an effort. But we went under the premise that CISA should have regions. CISA should have a regional presence. People who can help with security planning, who can help with security training, who can help with cyber resources that might be available to a state government or to a business that has a lot of branches in a particular area because it's a manufacturing concern. Um, and that took off. People really got it. They loved it. And I think our folks did a great job of integrating across the department other components and saying, I have this entity that needs training, that wants to participate in this full scale exercise this year. Um, so you become indispensable as the person who knows everyone and can get people to the right place to offer their services or grow and leverage their services. So,
So,
so that
so
was cool.
your area of expertise, 20 years in DHS, right, altogether. Uh,
Yes,
but your area of expertise from the early days, and then you moved specifically into the critical infrastructure, the CISA area, right?
correct.
So
Yeah.
talk about what you've seen there, and also how has industry become involved in the mission within DHS, but even more specifically in CISA, like contractors or companies.
Yeah. That that was a fascinating journey because at first it was like, you're the government and you're going to do what?
Right.
Don't you just regulate us? Like, it's, no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. We got this. And then we started to think through, and a lot of my job was day to day making sure things happened as chief of staff of IP, but also taking a strategic look. Where can we take this mission, and who are our allies in helping us to do that? And what tools had Congress given us or might give us to make it of value for everyone? And IAIP came into the department with some specific authorities that information about vulnerabilities, that's pretty wide. I'm undergoing hostile surveillance, or my system it could easily get hacked because that ransomware thing that's happening over here. Well, I'm very susceptible to it. But disclosing voluntarily information about vulnerabilities to the government will protect, or can protect, that information from disclosure publicly, meaning it's exempt from FOIA and state sunshine laws. So that became part of our value proposition to industry. Also, the next piece was an organizing construct. How do we let industry know they can talk to us, they can influence government decision making. And I think the best way to do that is you have an organizational construct with governance and rules of participation. And that became the sector partnership framework. So there are 16 critical infrastructure sectors and subsectors that we DHS is the advocate for.
Okay.
And we may not be the sector risk management agency for water because that's EPA, or energy because that's the Department of Energy, or health care and public health, that's HHS. But can we put a construct together that lets everybody have a say, that lets industry through its membership influence priorities for the government, meaning priorities in innovation, priorities um, in needs. We need resources that teach our employees this. We need exercises in a box. We can't afford to send people to a big exercise, but if our security staff could do them at all of our sites, we would learn and we would be more secure. And the bottom line is, can industry take what we I know I'm using a pencil, which is ridiculous, but the things we offer and use it to justify security investments for their corporate entity? And the answer over time became absolutely yes. And this is an important venue. It's a value for us to participate, send senior people, send our own strategists, to help come up with, a yearly work plan, contribute to the National Infrastructure Protection Plan's goals. That was another responsibility we have to execute under law. So just that whole what value proposition for participation are you creating? And each sector has its own specific needs. The 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 newest sector add to the construct is or was commercial manufacturing,
Hmm.
and that was when the Boeing and other big defense manufacturers came to us and basically said, I get the defense part, but I have a whole commercial business line, passenger planes, light rail for urban areas, etc. I want the same things security wise and resource wise that I'm getting for those parts of my
Hmm.
industry. So hence a new sector was adopted. And having a process for adopting or not a sector is
Yeah.
all part of the governance.
Right. So, let's move up a little bit more to today. You've had a front row seat to the arc of the evolution of the Department of Homeland Security, and 2025 has been a really transformative year with
Oh yeah.
DHS getting, top billing, top priority along with defense. I think it's 13% increase in budget, uh,
Mhm.
massive resources and emphasis being focused on DHS. Um, what do you see as the main, we know the priorities are border security and these things, but there's also other priorities going on. And for our friends and partners in the community out in industry, with this major shift in emphasis in DHS, where do you see the opportunities? Where do you see the opportunities in DHS going forward into 2026 and beyond?
That is a great question because, you think the 2021 year mark is a great time to take stock. Well, I think that's part of what's going on right now.
Mm.
And while mission 1 in DHS is obviously secure our borders, um, there is a huge amount of jointness in doing so than I had ever seen in my tenure. Um, and you see that in a number of things that then come out in contractual arrangements with the department.
When you say
I
jointness, do you mean joint like with other agencies or with industry or?
joint joint within the department.
Uh-huh, okay.
To get back to one of your original questions about, who was who in the zoo early on. And that had been tried for a long time to give DHS, from the procurement standpoint, integrated requirements capability. And extra time in heaven for people like Soraya Correa, Elaine Duke, uh, and Raphael Boris, on and on and on. The people who led the OPO and management functions, they were Claire Grady. They were trying to get us to a point of jointness and integration. And there were efforts that are documented that I actually got to be part of. Initially, there was the I staff, the I standing for integration. There was one SD. There will be fabulous prizes if you know these acronyms, by the way. There was one SD, one strategic direction, two SR, the second stage review, and now OPO, the Office of Procurement Operations, has actually assigned and stood up an acquisition strategy function. And again, this is if you're from DoD, this is second nature to you. Of course we write joint requirements. We don't do anything else. That's where planning comes from. Come on. Um, but that was hard to make so in the department, and it's taken a long time, but I'm thrilled to see it happening. And I think, to your question, Jake, it represents opportunity. So recently, DHS put out its first commercial solutions opening pilot, which means give us a give us a solution that involves more than just the Coast Guard for the maritime domain. How does DHS keep aware of it, operate in it, interact with the public in a consistent manner in maritime operations? And you think about it, everybody else says AMO, you see CBP, FEMA for disaster recovery, um, and on and on. I think you'll see that opportunity for integration also coming down with what's going on with counter UAS. Obviously, the department is standing up a big effort to, number one, contract some of the support out, and number two, a big new grant program that's in supporting. And how will those two interact and work together? Um, and it was interesting, if you attended the industry day there, that was one of the first times I had ever seen 7 or 8 different components present their requirements and not have it be their own industry
Right.
day. It was a joint across the board. I also think, as with many places in the government, you're going to see increased use of other transaction authority for quicker procurement activity, and also paid pilots, meaning buy it or try it before you buy it and do a 90-day pilot of a new innovation or technology. So jointness and forward thinking are what I really see. And then there's everybody's favorite, data. So not a contract doesn't go out these days, I don't think. And I see a lot of them because that's part of my job now, is staying on top of that. Not a day doesn't go by that somebody advertises sources solicited or an RFI for modernization. That is bringing together legacy sources of information to make them real usable data to inform decision making, to organize the use of resources, and in DHS's case, to link DHS and responders or owners and operators of infrastructure. And just an example, I mean, I can go back to my days as an investigator, and to get an accurate window of when somebody may have entered the US, you used to have to consult 5 or more databases.
Sure.
So it's, you know, DHS is a rich data lake of who, what, when, where, why, how. All the things you would ask in an investigation and all the things you would ask in a security program or a preparedness program. So those are some thoughts. Um, and then I have one more thing that I just want to highlight because it's kind of near and dear to my heart, but I think it broadens horizons of government contracting in a way that I don't really know that anybody else has. So dealing with effectively state, local, territorial, and tribal governments is clearly DHS's role. It's in the Homeland Security, any description of the Homeland Security enterprise. It's actually in the Act of the Homeland Security Act 2002. And you've seen glimpses of that in things that are coming out of the administration. Executive Order 14239, which, kind of starts, if you read the whole thing, as a devolving authority and decision making and responsibility for things FEMA may traditionally have done down to the SLTT level. But then it goes into a nice discussion of the department's critical infrastructure authorities, meaning the partnership structure that I talked about and owners and operators sharing and mitigating vulnerabilities. This gets me in my head to grants, but it also gets to procurement levels, authority levels. So who's going to help all the SLTT entities try to pull their pieces of the puzzle together and their responsibility for maintaining an emergency management, a public information and warning system, first responder capabilities, handling SEER events that happen in their jurisdiction. And by SEER, I mean special event, the non biggies, the non national security special events. But there are hundreds of those throughout the country in sports venues, in community, in conference centers, in public parks, you name it. They happen all year, and we're about to come up to some biggies. The World Cup,
Right.
the United States' 250th anniversary, if you will, and the Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles. So, although the report on FEMA itself is pending, I think that's just a little glimpse into the possibilities for the way contracting will stay the same in that it's enabling, but will change level with maybe DHS becoming the advisor. I don't know. It's going
With
to
the
take
rest going down to the SLTT
correct,
being done
correct.
more locally.
But somebody's going to have to ensure integration and common platforms and security of those common platforms for information sharing.
That
So,
seemed like a huge opportunity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's already all kinds of established players in that. If you look at the ISACs and ISOWs, that community could be used and tapped into and should be, in my opinion. But I just think that that's going to be kind of a next gen development for the Homeland Security enterprise. And that, like I said, does implicate grants. The success of the state and local cyber grant program, everybody loved it. There's no reason not to. It is bringing uh, essential capabilities to places that wouldn't be able to get them
Yeah.
otherwise because
Right.
they're very rural. They're cut off.
Right.
There's 100 reasons, but both houses of Congress have now either introduced or passed legislation to reauthorize that grant program. Now, will there be conditions on it that may be reflective of this larger SLTT picture? Maybe. And it's our responsibility to stay on top of all that and, use the results for the better of the country.
I think that that kind of pushing that down to the more local community level in the states might free the rest of DHS up to take on some of the bigger issues, right, around
True,
Homeland Security.
true, true. It might clear. I hate to use this because I sound so 80s, headspace or max headroom for innovation in CWMD, innovation in screening technologies. One of the big things, if you go back to the border, is the non-intrusive inspection. Um, that's kind of a new area for screening of cargo and conveyance, and ultimately Navy people. That is going to have to be developed and tried again to make sure it works. So
What do you think
that's
about
again where support comes in.
I see the administration looking at making fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. What are the
hmm
implications from a what does that change, and how does industry adjust to that?
Well, that could and certainly from the industry supply chain perspective, that's going to put a lot more control on any precursors that go into the making of it and the distribution. Um, just that's akin to what happened with OxyContin, because it was found to be such a human problem causing agent, that it gets really locked down, but it also has it can impact the international perspective, given trade and tariffs. And, no pun intended, the trade-offs of if you continue trading in this, you're going to get more tariffs.
Right.
So
That makes
there's
sense.
there's a diplomatic piece to that too.
So let's look forward. I mean, you've watched the evolution of DHS from literally from ground zero, from the beginning and the integration, putting it together. We've seen a massive re-emphasis on Homeland Security in 2025. So let's look forward. And you mentioned some of the big events we have coming up, which are national events. Um, what does DHS as an agency look like? Let's say we're in January 2029, 3 years from now. We just had an election. We don't know who won, but this current administration is still driving the priorities. What do you think? What do you think DHS looks like? Which sub agencies are getting the funding from our contracting community? Where are the best opportunities to invest in today to be ready for 2029?
That is an excellent question. I think, I really do think the trajectory that is being followed right now is one that respects the continued innovation of really the country. So you've got innovation in the counter UAS and or UAS. There is UAS for good, helping with rescues, helping with water rescues in particular.
Okay.
Y- that's an essential tool. So I think that tool becomes inculcated into department operations, meaning that the contracting relationship synergy has driven innovation into a this is not a nice to have anymore. It's a we do this every day kind of thing. And I think the same with some of the other innovative a- aspects that we've been talking about, CWMD, I the involvement of universities in the whole prevention effort. I really do see prevention. You know, what just happened at um, Brown,
Mhm.
and even with the Hollywood family, were there the whole science of were there signs and were there avenues and resources that
And
could have
even
been brought to bear.
data, even
Not
data,
that
right?
even data,
Yeah.
exactly. Not that people did not try. I mean, my goodness, it's your family. Um, but I do think prevention is coming online as maybe a sub-discipline in the whole Homeland Security equation, and that's my opinion. I did study criminal justice statistics, and, so I always believe that there is a learning from data potential for everything that you should at least try, before you discard that approach. I see a very strong relationship with SLTT, entities, meaning, there is still an assistant secretary for state and local on the books in law. Um, Maybe that position is elevated and resourced and does some of the things that some of the other components have been doing. And that's an internal, what does DHS look like? And then the whole data piece, modernizing and linking um, disparate systems of data collection or information collection, turning information collection into data that informs decision making, that reduces cost and um, increases efficiency. And then the big one that everybody's got a study group for right now, if I could be a little facetious for a second, AI.
Sure.
I really do think that the department needs to and is working hard to get a handle on AI and its use in public facing processes. I know that FEMA is kind of experimenting with AI enhancements to some of the grant management. Once a grant is awarded, how it's tracked, pieces of the process with maybe digital twins. But that also begs the question of perhaps DHS's next security mission, and this would be where CISA and other places come in, because use of AI begs the question of what are you doing about security to make sure the data is still the original.
Right. Yeah.
It has not been tampered with, it hasn't been poisoned, particularly if it is enhancing something like a UAS that has a targeting function. And by targeting, in this context, I mean really spotting
Right.
um,
Yeah.
what should not be happening. But I really do see, and this will be government wide, but the harnessing AI to positive use and securing the integrity of data in an AI enhanced process as something that people will need to wake up in 2029 and say, okay, we're well on our way, or well, you never say we got this
We're not
with
there, but yeah, that's great.
exactly.
Sue, fascinating discussion. It's great to hear your perspective.
Thank you.
I always like to ask one word. What's the one word you would use to describe your gut feeling about the future of the Homeland Security mission?
That's hard not to do in a
You can
phrase.
hyphenate if you need to.
Oh, I can hyphenate? Thank you. I think it is preservation of the United States
Okay,
and all that that implicates.
great. I like it. I like it. I hope so, and I hope that's what we're doing. I hope a lot of the focus is going to do that, and I think it's a worthy mission.
Mhm.
So thanks for joining us today. You're a fantastic leader, a voice of the industry, of the community. Thank you for your service. Almost
Mm.
35 years helping and keeping our country safe. A lot of people don't recognize the hard work that goes behind that. But thank you so much for your service. Thanks for being on the podcast,
Thank
and
you.
really look forward to seeing you around the industry here over the next few years.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to be here and do a little storytelling today.
Yeah,
So,
and people want to work with Sue. She's one of our precision experts, so she's got a lot of insight, can help companies that are looking to penetrate this new area of focus. So feel free to reach out. She can help a lot of companies in a lot of different ways. So to our audience, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Future of GovCon, and we look forward to seeing you next week. All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of the Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there. And you can always learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.